Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Obviously going into this before you knew what was going to be happening in 2020, you wanted to deal with the Electoral College. Now, was it really focused initially on Electoral College, or were you also looking at sort of using that as a way to talk about the national vote referendum?
No, it was really about the Electoral College. Most Americans have n no idea why the Electoral College was created, and they're really confused as to how it works today. No matter what level of education you're at, most Americans don't understand how it works. And so, when you have such a vast pain point against a very vast electorate, I felt that making a film like this, I was surprised that a film like this hadn't already been made, actually, because it's about a pretty important election, our highest election. Uh, that, and that I felt that I was uniquely positioned to tell the story. So yes, it was absolutely about the Electoral College, but obviously I had no idea how 2020 would unfold.
Now, at what point did you sort of shift to, hey, I think this national vote thing is interesting because it shows a different way out of this electoral problem?
Well, I mean, the whole time I was researching everything that was going on around the
Yeah.
Electoral College, and I had honed in on Colorado because there was a faithless elector case that ascended up to the Supreme Court. They ended up voting with the status quo, so in the end, that thread didn't, make it into the film because it was pretty, long and confusing, and by the
Yeah.
end of it, we were in the same place. But then, also in Colorado was this national popular vote ballot initiative, and in 2019, Colorado had joined the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and soon thereafter, enough signatures were gathered to get a repeal initiative on the ballot. So this was the first time that actual citizens were voting for or against their state's participation in the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. That's a mouthful. And I thought, again, what I wanted to do in the making of this film was to put a human face on the Electoral College. So rather than talking about, oh, this compact is happening, why not, follow the people who are for and against it and who are using, grassroots organizing to get their constituents to vote. And so, that's how I ended up in Colorado. And then at that point, I thought it would be, made sense to just find four electors in Colorado to follow. And so I think Colorado is an amazing use case because it's a very diverse state from very rural to very cosmopolitan. And I thought it would help me tell a really great story, which I believe it did in the end.
And you did a nice job of getting a diverse four electors to look at. I mean, from people who are really politically aware to, let's be kind, someone maybe isn't as knowledgeable about the process as they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have, party elders to students, right? 18-year-old students and 20-year-old somethings who decided they wanted to be an elector for Kanye West just because they thought it was a a kind of crazy thing to do, and like, wow, I can be an elector for Kanye West, how weird is that? And kind of like it was a big joke. But again, these four electors come have very different motivations, but the four of them also comprise the fabric that is America. And so I wanted this film to be representative of America and all the different perspectives and ideas that reside in America.
Well, one of the things that you hear pushback from conservatives when you talk about changing the electoral college is it's going to disenfranchise small states. And I think one of the things that you did that was really interesting was to not just highlight the fact that, look, this is an outgrowth of the discussions around slavery, but doing things like having some of the conversations from the Constitutional Convention read by someone who's not white.
Mhm.
And it was a very sort of subtle way of reinforcing, look, this at the end of the day, this really was about primarily about slavery.
Yeah, absolutely. And my whole thing was to put a human face on the history and the process. And so putting a human face by finding the four electors, but then when we are talking about this history, I really wanted to juxtapose the humanity of the people, that were disenfranchised, enslaved, and juxtapose their humanity against the words that sought to dehumanize them. And throughout the film, my whole kind of artistic approach was to use visual poetry to tell the story, and that's why you have the animation that's, not necessarily literal depictions of what happened, but very poetically visual depictions of that painful history, but also to, yeah, to use Black actors to kind of bring to life the words of their ancestors who were not given a seat at the table, and but yet whose bodies were used for more political power.
What was a difficult thing for you to actually show in the film? A process or an idea that it's like finding a way to weave it in with everything else was a little challenging.
Yeah, I mean, the Electoral College math and that process is very opaque and confusing for most people. So creating those infographics that were, both beautiful to look at, but also informative at the same time, took an incredible amount of workshopping, months and months and months of workshopping, with, my graphics dude, Chris Gall, who's really incredible, and also Pierre Benu, who did the animation, and working with them for months on end in terms of like how do we visualize this in a way that is accurate, artistic, and pays tribute to the history, but also explains a very opaque process to to Americans.
Was there an aspect to this that you couldn't get into the film that you thought was interesting, but it just didn't fit in with what else was being talked about?
Oh my God, there's a ton of stuff. I
I
say,
figured you had a couple.
oh my gosh. I mean, I learned something new about the Electoral College every single day I was working on this. And it was mind-numbing, how much you could or could not include, but it has to be like the right amount that is digestible within the 78-minute format that I created. That basically gives folks a baseline understanding of the history, and also, the process. And so I had, again, and that's why it took hours of workshopping. Like, okay, let's include this, but maybe not include that because then that's just too much. There's only so much that you can absorb, within a short period of time. And at the end of the day, it's a visual medium. So, I guess the explanation videos again had to be very, very precise and succinct. And the message had to be very precise and succinct. So yeah, there's a ton of stuff. You'd have to uh buy me a beer and spend a few hours, talking about it on another
Okay,
day to
I'm
get through
ready.
it.
A little bit of a political junkie, so yeah, I'm ready. Obviously the timing of this is really great going into the election, but is there a part of you as a filmmaker is thinking, wow, it'd be really nice to revisit this next year and see how this played out?
I mean, what I've learned is expect the unexpected. And so 2020 was, a great example, and expect the unexpected. I wasn't expecting, everything that happened around the Electoral College, to try to, change the outcome of the election. And who knows what's going to happen in 20. It definitely does seem like things are bubbling to an apex. And yeah, I mean, I've had people say, hey, maybe you should do a part two. And I'm like, oh my God. I can't tell you how much brain power and just it took every single last skill I had as a multidisciplinary artist to create this film, to make it educational and entertaining, all at the same time, and engaging. And so, and I did it as an independent filmmaker, and I bootstrapped it, and just was fortunate enough to get a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities, which changed everything after that. But I went into this, not knowing, how I was going to do it, but I somehow felt that I was uniquely positioned to tell the story.
Does this, having dealt with this story for so long, does this make you want to do something completely different now to do a thing about flowers or whatever?
I do want to do some stuff that's completely different, but then I also want to do some other heavy stuff because I know that I can do it now that I've done a film about the Electoral College, which was a huge undertaking. I'm like, okay, I can do something of this level of complexity. So, but I want to kind of mix it up, I want to do some more, human interest, love stories to about the intersection of Catholicism, colonialism, and gender rights in the Philippines, where divorce and is illegal.
Mm.
So yeah, some heavier topics, some lighter, but also really important topics too.
Well, I mean, I suspect that at the end of the day, working on this was a little easier because although 2020 might not have ended perfectly, at least it ended in a way where we still have a country and everyone's still voting. You know, who knows what's going to happen this next time? And someone's willingness to tackle this probably will depend on how depressing a situation it is when we look back in January or February next year.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy to make this film, to raise money for this film, and so if I am, going to do something like that, making a timely film, you're on a race against time, whether you have the money or not, you have to find a way to keep working on it. And so, I learned to shoot, I learned to edit, I mean, I was a musician before, so I was editing audio on a timeline. So
Yeah.
I had a lot of transferable skills, but I had to get really great at a lot of things in a short amount of time in order for this to get done. Um, Fortunately, I'm a quick learner, and I'm so glad and so happy that we have this film right in time for the next election. And PBS is the perfect platform. It's going to release on September 30th, and will be available on the PBS Smart app, which is downloadable on any device, your phone, your iPad, your laptop, your smart TV. So I suggest, yeah, people download, because not only does PBS have one person, one vote on it, it has a lot of other really great content that's free for the public.
Well, you mentioned being a musician. Is there a musician story you would like to tell if you had the chance?
Yes, there are actually. There are. Um, but I'll hold on telling the idea until it's more fleshed out. But yes, absolutely. I mean, even in my approach to this film, one of my musical colleagues did the score. He's incredible, multi-platinum, multi-Grammy award winning platinum producer who's written hits for Alicia Keys and Dr. Dre and Seal and Dave Matthews Band. And I played with him, back in the day. And our paths cross again, and he happens to be really passionate about this subject matter. And we have an incredible score because of him.
Well, I know I need to wrap this up, so let me just do it this way. Talk about the decision to have someone singing the Star Spangled Banner over the credits, because that seems like a way of reminding people why this is all important.
Yeah, so just because I make a film, about the Electoral College that airs all of its dirty laundry and seems to be critical of it, doesn't make me any less of a patriot, than someone else who considers themselves patriotic. And so I thought it made sense. Again, being having the musical background, any chance in the film that I could, break out into song, which you see there are many musical interludes in the film. I thought it was just a really apropos way to say, listen, I made this because I believe in the promise of this country, and I believe that we as a people have to work every day to fight towards a more perfect union. But also, the image of one of uh the black man singing, and what black people have done to build wealth in this country from the very beginning, is something that needs to be acknowledged and recognized. And so there's definitely like a multi-layered meaning from, using, one of, the black actors to sing the song, and along with the idea of, you know, reshaping, patriotism, in our, in a more expansive and inclusive image.
Well, I really enjoyed the film, and congratulations with it. I hope it does very well.
Thank you so much, Rick. I appreciate this conversation today.
Thanks.